All right, so I want to do a quick video just on something that we have borrowed from a practitioner called Dr. Andrea Spina, who runs the Functional Anatomy Seminars business. And this is something that I get all the athletes to do, and we're going to be implementing even in more detail next year. But it's basically a morning routine. We call these controlled articular rotations, and I'm going to give you this video here because I think it's absolutely essential. If we did one thing with every single athlete, this would be the thing that we do. And so controlled articular rotations are fancy for, we call it CARs. It's fancy for basically joint circles. Now, you can think of these as just joint circles and something that you're just, moving your body around in a circle. But it's much more than that. So what we're teaching here, we're trying to get, when I was talking to you about the range of motion capabilities, the active range of motion that we're looking for, and trying to close that gap between between passive and active range. That's a big goal, and part of that comes down to control. So can we control our joints in bigger and bigger ranges of motion? Meaning, do we have strength? Are we telling the nervous system that this body has the strength to be in this position? Because at the end of the day, it doesn't just come down to flexibility, it comes down to the nervous system basically inhibiting the stretch shortening cycle, or the protective mechanism that the nervous system has for a joint itself, as to why that joint can't move into a bigger range of motion. So a couple of concepts I want you to think about on these. We're going to go from head to toe. It's just going to be a sort of a quick one rotation each side so you guys can get an idea of this. So the first thing is that we want this to be a morning routine for every single athlete, coaches too. But definitely when you get up in the morning, I do this when I get up, literally making my coffee. So I'm boiling my water, first half of it I'm doing, pouring the water in the French press, waiting for it to sit for a while, and that's when I do my second half. It should just take that much time. So in terms of time, we're not using time as an excuse. This is something that is a great thing to start off your day with, because it's getting nutrients into the joint. So if there's any kind of decongesting that needs to happen, any joint health that we're improving, we're getting movement in the joint. More movement is specifically in a joint, the better, okay? It's also going to be an assessment tool. What is my range of motion at this specific joint itself? So when I do other work, whether it's corrective exercises, or some isometric work, or some of the training that I'm doing on the side, is that having an effect on the joint itself? And this would be, we'd go back to the joint circles, back to the CARs, and see whether or not those are actually improving. So when we're doing these, I want you to think of two different types of intensities. One is I'm going to give a percentage of the intensity at which the rest of the body is holding tension. So if I say I want 50% intensity for the rest of the body, it literally means if I'm going to move my neck around, it means that I'm going to actually stiffen all the muscles that I can in my body to about 50% of the maximum contraction that I can do. So if I squeeze as hard as I can, 100% as hard as I can, we're going to knock that intensity in half, and that's what we're trying to hold the body at. The moving joint is going to be about 20% or so less than that. And what I mean by 20% intensity is that if I'm trying to move my neck through a range of motion, I'm going to imagine like the density of the air has gone to about 30% more than what it was. So if I have the body holding at 50%, I'm moving my neck through a range at 30%, I'm looking at 30% more dense air than normal. So there's some resistance there, and it's a slower controlled movement, but it's not like super slow, okay? We can bring up those intensities. If we're talking about training and actually doing this within a session, I might bring these intensities up to 80 and 60 instead of 50 and 30. So anyways, don't get bogged down too much in that. Your morning routine is going to be nice and easy flowing movements. We're trying to get, we're stiff in the morning, we're generally dehydrated, so these are nice and easy progressions to do. So what we want to avoid is any other joint moving while we're trying to move a specific joint. So as an example, if I'm moving my shoulder through a range of motion, my glenohumeral joint, and I'm trying to do a full circle in just the shoulder itself, Well, I'm going to try and hide that by rotating my thoracic spine as I come through. So that's something we would call joint coupling, where we're using other joints to produce the movement that we should have at the one joint. So this is very specific work, and that's why we do that nice irradiation, we call it, where we're trying to get as many muscles involved as we can to hold the body stiff so we don't get any of those compensations, okay? So we'll quickly go through from the head down. And so we're gonna start with the neck. We take an inhale, we trap that air, and we irradiate the body to 50%, and then we're gonna draw a circle with the chin. So we come down, around to the shoulder, all the way around the top to the other shoulder, down to the chest. Then we're rotating to the other shoulder, and coming around. And just checking in with the body to make sure there's no compensation, there's no movement in the rest of the body there. So that would be the neck. The spine is going to be a little bit different. I'll try and show a couple angles here. So we're looking at sort of moving through that thoracic spine area. And so what I'm going to do is cross my arms on my shoulders. I'm going to start to round down one vertebrae at a time. I'm just going to go into a bit of flexion here. And basically when I come down, I don't want to go all the way into the low back there. I just want to start off one at a time until I hit that sort of mid back area. So once I go into that flexion, then I'm going to rotate my shoulders. Again, not moving the lower half at all, side bending to that side, and then I'm going to go all the way in the big circle, all the way around. Again, the spine doesn't move all that much, so it's not a huge movement. Checking in with my hips. Get to the other side, I side bend there, rotate there, and then finish the circle off. So the other way, I would rotate, side bend, extend, all the way around, side bend, rotate, and down. So there's my spine car there for that one. Now we're going to go to the scapula. So again, we just want the shoulder blades moving independently on their own. So we're going to have, there's multiple ways we can do this. I'm going to give you guys a nice easy one to start just so that we can get some really good feedback here. Hands are at the side, okay? And I'll try sideways here. Hands are at the side. They can go up and down your legs, but they're not coming forward or back off of the legs. So we're going to go from there, we're going to shrug up towards the ears, retract back, depress down, and we're going to roll forward, okay, into protraction. So we come up, back, down, and forward, and then we reverse that, back, up, forward, and down, okay? So again, really easy to move the head forward as we're retracting back, so really check in with the head to make sure nothing's going on there. Then we're going to have the elbows. So we're going to go shoulder, glenohumeral joint first. So this one, again, we're looking at that circle being as close to a windmill in one plane as we can. So I'm going to hold the other hand out here. I'm going to inhale with the moving arm, that palm's facing inwards and the thumb's facing forward. I'm going to inhale, trap the air, irradiate the body to 50%, and then I'm going to try and flex the shoulder up as far as we can without compensating, so the elbow doesn't bend, the shoulder doesn't shrug, the back doesn't arch, and so on. We get to that point, we're going to flip out into internal rotation. Now the key here is that I'm not rotating my chest around, I'm not opening this up at all as I come down. As I come through here, now my palm's facing away from me because I'm wringing the towel out into internal rotation. I come back behind me. At that sticking point, I'm going to rotate over into external rotation, and again, without opening up that chest too much, I'm going to come through overhead and straight down. Now, the healthier the shoulder, the less of a lateral position we're going to have, but that has to be done with the square shoulder there, or the square chest, so we're not twisting the thoracic spine like we talked about before. So again, we would do both sides there. Now we're going to jump to the elbow like I was talking about, and this one I like to have just the finger touching the elbow at the side here, just for feedback, so I'm not losing that contact coming forward or back. That's going to stay right there. So I start with a straight arm, palm facing forward, and I'm opening up that palm into supination as much as I can here, coming all the way up into flexion, getting as close to the shoulder as I can, I'm gonna rotate that open as far as I can, come back down all the way to the bottom. Then from there, we're gonna keep that open with the palm down as far as we can, all the way back up, rotate, open. And again, we're trying to get independent movement at that elbow joint, seeing if we can get that radius to move independently of the humerus up here. Okay, so there's your elbow. Now we're gonna go to wrist. And again, all these things super important, especially from a pulling standpoint. So with the wrist, basically I'm holding flat, nice and level here, and not getting any rotation of that radius coming across here. We want all this to happen at the wrist joint itself. So all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna laterally deviate, coming down, immediately deviate, and I'm gonna come down all the way around to the other side, flexing up. And again, the big thing with these, especially through the wrists and the ankles, is this control of the circle, so that we don't just get dropping down in really fast motions. We're actually getting a nice control out of the outer rims of the circle itself, out of the joint itself, and trying to control that as much as possible. The better control and slowing down, the more strength and range we're actually going to build in that position, okay? Now we can get into the fingers and toes. I'm not going to get into that today just for time, but we can get right down to individual toes, individual joints within the fingers and within the toes as well. And that will play a big role. We have some of our athletes working on those as well, just from their ability to actually run and not be compensating because of a problem in those joints. I want to go to the hip now. So we've gone basically head, upper body. We've hit pretty much most things. With the hip, we want to make sure that you're actually hanging on to something. This is not a great example. I would want to have like a post or something that I can really leverage and hold down on. But basically, you'll be able to see most of that motion happen here. So I'm going to bring my other hand up here. The idea here when I go through this range of motion is I'm not moving away from the wall or the object that I'm holding on to. So if I'm here, I'm going to try not to deviate away from that wall. We're going to go up into as high of a hip flexion as we can. Okay, without compensating. I'm going to bring that out without rotating my hips from this side. I'm not rotating away from that wall. I'm going to where I can here in abduction. And then I'm going to internally rotate my hip, trying to keep the knee at that height, at that same height, okay? You can see I'm compensating a bit, but I come around into extension and then back down, okay? And I'm going to inhale, radiate that body. I'm coming into extension first, and then I'm going abduction again here, okay? And now I'm going to externally rotate. I'm bringing my shin down so it's more perpendicular. Then I'm coming all the way around to finish that circle off. And again, trying to keep that knee height relatively the same as what it was when I brought it out into abduction. Okay, that's a huge one. And that one, the shoulders and the hips are probably the biggest ones that I see people having problems with, myself included. I mean, it's just, there's so much going on at the shoulders and the hips. There's a lot of rotational component to it. And I would say that most people are really struggling in internal rotation, okay, of the hip and of the shoulder. And if we can improve on those and get some big changes there, especially at the younger age, we're going to have much healthier hips, which means we're definitely going to have much healthier backs as well. Okay, so that's the hip there. We're going to go down to the knee, and the knee is basically, I'm trying to lock in my femur here. I'm trying not to move this into rotation or up and down at all. So I'm going to lock this in, get nice and tall. This is a very active hamstring one here. So what we're doing is we're putting the hamstring on stretch, but actively by utilizing the quads here. So I'm going to turn my toes inwards immediately towards the body. I'm going to come up into extension of the knee. I'm going to rotate out with the toes and come down. And I'm going to keep those toes there. Up, rotate in and down. You can see at the end starting to shake a little bit because I'm hitting my end range here, and I'm actively trying to pull that into the end range. So again, around, trying to have this dissociate from this, back up, rotate, and down. Okay, so that's the knee. And then the last one, we've got the ankle. And for that one, I'll try and give you a decent angle here. But basically now, we just want to hold on to the shin, because we actually don't want the shin doing the movement here. We don't want this dissociation. We want to lock this in and have it just at the ankle. So we pull the toes up towards the shin, and we're going to draw this circle with the big toe, as big of a circle as we can draw all the way around. And you can see it's a little bit jolty there as we go around, and I'm trying to really control, especially those drops and coming around the bottom are the hardest parts. And again, these are going to dictate whether or not you have active range of motion at that ankle when you need it. Again, I can't think of a better example than cross-country skiing when we're picking skis up, coming out of a skating position, but also in the squat. Like I said, when we're squatting in the weight room, we have to have that ankle range of motion actively being able to pull, because those knees actually do need to come forward quite a bit. And again, if we have somebody stuck here and then we load them to try and bring them down into that squat, we're probably going to injure them. So again, going through 1 to 2 rotations each side in the morning, and then trying to do that throughout the day as well, making sure that you're not staying stagnant too long. Again, the more movement in those joints, specific joints, the better, and we're going to have a lot healthier joints because of it. Okay, so good luck with those.